Check 1 2, check 1 2. Not sure if you guys can hear me or see me yet, but if you can, go ahead and comment below. Let me know you can hear me all right. We're getting settled in. We're going to go live in just a moment. We are live, but if you can hear me, I'm live. And we are going to break down the latest on Jeffrey Epstein, but just want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay, and I'm coming through loud and clear before we continue. All right. I think you guys might be able to hear me. I'm going to go ahead and check it out on my other computer, and then we will get started. Yes, I am going live right now in just a moment. Jeffrey Epstein's victims speaking out today in court, and I have the transcripts. I got the documents. I went ahead and paid some money to get these transcripts, so I hope that you guys who are about to watch this will support and help me out how you can, so that we can continue to do independent media like this, so we can continue to ask the hard questions and get to the bottom of what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein and plenty of other cases. All right, so I just want to invite you guys to sign up at patreon.com/Derrick Broze. I'm on subscribestar.com/Derrick-Broze now. We are also on, where are we at? We are also on, we're doing a GoFundMe. Okay, cool. So it sounds like you guys can hear me. Everything's good? Awesome. Okay, cool. Then let's get started, guys. Let's do this. Y'all ready? I'm going to bring my ugly face on the camera for you. Tell me if you can hear me okay. Am I looking all right? Can you hear me okay? All right, guys. Welcome to The Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze, of course, with the Conscious Resistance Network. And as I said, I decided to do live instead of just doing a video for this, because I do believe I'm probably the only one who is reading from the transcripts themselves. Now, what I'm referencing is today, Jeffrey Epstein's victims, many of his alleged victims who have been suing him in court and trying to pursue justice for years, were able to speak in court in New York City, despite being denied the ability to actually, take him on head on in court. The Judge Berman, I believe is his name. We're going to go through all this. I got the documents, guys. I got everything. He did say that he thought it was appropriate, and the prosecutors and pretty much everybody agreed, like the victims, or the alleged victims, if you will, of Epstein should be able to have their day in court so that they can testify and they can at least share what they had to say. So if this works out right, you should see my screen. Let me make sure you guys can see my screen. All right, cool. I think you should be seeing my screen. And I just want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. Once again, as I said, patreon.com/Derrick Broze, subscribestar.com/Derrick Broze. Also supporting us via our ongoing monthly crowdfunding campaign. We're trying to get up to $2,500 with just a few more donations, especially because what I'm about to share with you guys just cost me $103 to get the documents that I'm about to share with you guys. All right, so let's do this though. So today, the news is all over this. Jeffrey Epstein is, they're trying to make me pay for their website. I'm not going to pay you, NBC. What Jeffrey Epstein could not buy, he forcibly took. His accusers speak out in court. So again, this is the big news, as I said, is that his accusers, his alleged victims, were in court today and were able to verify, what we've already known, what we've heard in other court documents, and to speak out publicly. Many of them for the first time. At least one of them still was describing herself as a Jane Doe and refused to ID herself. But the attorneys were there, including attorney Bradley Edwards, who I previously interviewed, who I have his business card right here. And so my point here is that the victims had a chance to speak in court. But the reason I hate this, guys, and the reason I was asking you guys to help fund me so I can go to New York City if this trial did happen, is because when you look at the news and you report on something like this, like think about this. This is Epstein, right? Today we're told the victims get to speak out for the first time in a court setting, because prior to this, every time the victims would try to sue and try to bring their evidence to trial, Epstein would basically, pay out of court or settle out of court so that nobody would actually have to come share their testimony. So this is supposed to be a big day. But what we get from the mainstream is basically just quotes. Eats away at my soul. What he could not buy, he took. There's several quotes that are being shared around most of the mainstream. Just search Jeffrey Epstein right now on your favorite alternative non-Google search engine, and you will see some of the same quotes being shared around. And they're important, right? But then I collected all the articles available that I could find to see what was out there and see if there was any links to the actual transcripts. Here's one of the unidentified woman who is known as Jane Doe, who's, said she was abused by Jeffrey Epstein. One of the things I noticed, though, is that we're just getting pieces of the puzzle. And for those who've been around for a long time, you know that I reported on journalist Barrett Brown's trial in Dallas a few years back. I reported on Ross Ulbricht, founder of the Silk Road online marketplace in New York City a couple years back. I was at the Bradley Manning hearings in 2013 in Maryland. I've reported on these trials, and I get a feel for not only how boring and how tiresome they can be, but how much the media really leaves out. So I make it a point to sit there and document, write down every single thing I hear, and then go back home and turn it into an article. That's what I would have done if I had been in court today in New York City, or if Epstein had actually made it to trial. Because when you don't do that, what you get is just pieces of the puzzle that are being told to you by the corporate deadstream media. They just give you a couple of quotes here and there, and they provide background. I'm not even going to bother reading this. I'm mainly using this as an example to show you guys how they're only quoting a few of the women. They're not giving you the full story. But what I do want to show you is that Bradley Edwards, the attorney that I interviewed, let me see, Edwards, oops, I can't spell today, sorry about that. This better be the article I was looking for. Well, it might be this article. There's a point where he is quoted as saying that it's very curious. It's curious that the way that Epstein died. And so I thought that was interesting. So I went ahead and called, and actually, look, I swear to you guys, this was in here earlier, and now it looks like it's gone. Unless I'm just thinking of a different article I was reading earlier. Earlier when I was reading this, it said Bradley Edwards called the death of Epstein curious, and he wondered how he could commit suicide. So I reached out to Bradley Edwards, and I left a message with his office for the second time in 2 weeks, trying to see if I could talk to him again. Again, you guys have heard my interview with him recently. Some of you think that it exonerates Trump. Others of you realize the importance that he admits that he was not able to track down the claim that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. Anyways, the reason we're doing this live video, not just a regular video, is because when I realized this, that, okay, where's the actual transcripts? I see these quotes from the women, but when do I actually get to see what these women are saying? Well, I guess we're not privy to that information unless you file for court documents. And that's what I did right here. So I did a little bit of research, and I found that if you want to get court transcripts in New York, you got to go to the Southern District of New York. Of course, that's the court that they were at today. But you got to go to this website, sdreporters.com, Southern District Reporters, which is the website for court reporters and for the transcripts and all that stuff. So I filled this all out. You guys can see let me just try to zoom this in for you. It says if you want it hourly, which is basically by day, it's $8 per page, or it can be, it gets pretty expensive. So I filled this all out, and I wanted same day delivery. I put all my little information here, called them. I did the homework, right? And boom, here you go. I got the transcripts from today, which is 86 pages. This is, again, you're not going to see this anywhere in the mainstream. They're only going to give you a couple of quotes. And I don't know any other journalist who has, got this yet. This is just from 10:30 a.m. today, August 22nd. So this is fresh, brand new things from about 14 different victims of Jeffrey Epstein testified in court today and had their hearings. So I don't know anybody else who's doing this. Again, I'm just saying we're about to go through this. So I don't know how long I can go live, how long I want to stay live, but we're going to go through this at least. What I want to do now, though, is take a couple questions from you guys before I dive into this. What I want you to do is tell me what keywords should I search for. What words, let's say Clinton, Trump, obvious things like that. But obviously, it could take all day for me to sit here and read the transcripts of 86 pages worth of these women, and I will do this. But as far as on air, right here on the video with you guys, since we're live right now, just go ahead and tell me what words you want me to look up. I'll go ahead and check the comments now on YouTube, and we will dig through these together. Because that's what I want to do. I want to dig through these together. I want to see if we can find anything of value. Once again, I want to remind you guys, you notice I don't take any super chats or power chats or whatever the heck they are on YouTube. So I don't take Google money. I don't take any of that money. If you want to support me, especially for the fact that I just spent $103 to get these documents, chip in at our GoFundMe campaign. The link is below the video, or actually it's absent. I'll post it in just a moment. There's also a Patreon account. I'm on Subscribestar now as well. So please, if you can help me recover the 103, I really did this because I was like, you know what? My audience comes through and they want to see this information. I'm going to pay this $103. I got a freaking dentist appointment tomorrow. I really can't afford to spend $103 on court documents, but I thought it was important enough. And again, because I want to read this for myself. All right, so let's look it up. I see Clinton. All right, we're going to go with Clinton, number 1. Clinton. Okay, here we go. One hit. Let's see if we can get a little context. Who is this that's speaking? Let's see. Let's scroll up. I did see one Clinton, but I just want to make sure that we know who's talking here before we just start reading out. This is obviously one of the victims. Okay. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I just downloaded these, just got them, called them, did the work, so I haven't had any chance to kind of make notes of where to look at right away. Miss Allred. Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, I would like to read a statement for Jane Doe. So this is one of the lawyers reading a statement from Jane Doe, because 14 people came to court, or I don't know if all 14 of them came to court, but they had some statements that were read aloud that were pre-prepared, pre-arranged, but others spoke in person. So this might be a statement from somebody who was not present, Jane Doe. So let's go back down. This is Jane Doe speaking. She says, let's read the paragraph before. I didn't know what was going on. It was my first official meeting to be cast in the United States. I was a young girl and confused. He got very close to me and I had a skirt on. He started to touch my genitals. I refused him. Then he went to the massage table and showed me the vibrator. This sounds like the typical Epstein thing we heard about. I took it and I threw it at him. At this point, I ran to the door again and figured out how to get out of there. A girl outside asked me where I was going, and she said to be careful. She said that Mr. Epstein knew a lot of powerful people, including Bill Clinton, and that if I didn't do what Mr. Epstein wanted, I would not be able to have any job in the industry. I was so scared. I couldn't wait to get out of there, and I left. I took the train home. I'd spent all of my savings getting Victoria's Secret lingerie to prepare for what I thought would be my audition, but instead it seemed like a casting call for prostitution. I feel like I was in hell. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. So that was one victim right there. All right, so let me see what else we got. Some other words. Plain. I'm gonna go with let's go ahead and go with Israel. How about that? Let's just start off with Israel. See if there's anything fun with that. Oh, disappointment, guys. Nothing on Israel. Underage. Let's look that up. Underaged victims. That's the only time. So this is somebody else speaking. I had hoped humanity would prevail, but it seems that he outsmarted everyone so far, and his ghost is still laughing at us. This is, of course, the statement being read today. I appeal to all those just and true that his evil legacy and his death not stand in the way of resolution and justice for all of his underaged victims. You know what I'm going to search? Co-conspirators. Let's see if they spell it. They might not. Okay, yeah, there's at least one. So this is, I think, the lawyers, because I did read that the lawyers, okay, Miss Lerner, this is one of the lawyers, the state prosecutor, or the prosecutors, I believe. It says, Jeffrey Epstein thought he was above the law, and essentially he was until now. The system let Jennifer, who's one of the victims, and the other victims down, but it does not have to end here. We ask that the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI to bring all of Epstein's enablers and co-conspirators to justice. So at least we know for sure they are calling for co-conspirators. And I will say this, though, this is obviously not the only, I just searched cameras, by the way, nothing popped up for cameras. This is not the only Epstein documents available. We have, 15 years worth of documents, but this is just what the women chose to say. They knew that this might likely be the only time that they're going to get a public hearing where they can actually speak about this stuff. And this is what at least 14 of the victims chose to speak about. Okay, underage cameras, Trump plane, I'll search those in just a second. So when it comes to Island, it says, this is from Miss Davies. All right, her name is Shantae Davies. I met Jeffrey Epstein through my first massage teacher, a man who took me in as his apprentice to teach me a practice I wanted to learn while in desperate search to find a cure for a debilitating neurological disorder that I have, which manifests into violent vomiting attack. It's called cyclical vomiting syndrome. I was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell upon my first meeting of her. I wouldn't know if I had been recruited until many years later when I would read it in a headline. Ghislaine and Jeffrey took me in. They sent me to school. They gave me a job. They flew me around the world, introduced me to a world I had only dreamed of, and made me feel as though I had become part of their family, another thing I was desperately searching for. But on my third or fourth time meeting them, they brought me to Jeffrey's Island for the first time, and on the first night there, Sarah Kellen, who you guys know is one of the co-conspirators, we talked about this in bringing down Jeffrey Epstein, came tapping on my door late at night to inform me Jeffrey was ready for another massage. My instincts told me this didn't feel right, but I got up and followed her to a villa I hadn't yet seen. Oh, a hidden villa on the island. Interesting. Jeffrey and Ghislaine's villa, so their own private little spot. I began my massage, trying not to let him smell my fear and obvious discomfort, but before I knew what was happening, he grabbed onto my wrist and tugged me towards the bed. I tried to pull away, but he was unbuttoning my shorts and pulling my body onto his already naked body faster than I could think. I was searching for words, but all I could say was meek, no, please stop, but that just seemed to excite him more. He continued to rape me, and when he finished up, he hopped off and went to the shower. I pulled my shorts up, and I ran as fast as I could back to my own villa, my feet bloodied from the rocks. I cried myself to sleep that night. Oh, man. I don't know if I need to keep reading that. Blackmail. Search blackmail. I'm reading the comments, guys. I'm just a little bit behind, but just keep leaving comments. Nothing on blackmail. What else we got? Prince Andrew. Let's just say Andrew, see if that pops up. Nope, nobody chose to bring up Prince Andrew today. What else we got? Island, Prince Andrew, Dershowitz. Yeah, let's do Dershowitz. Old Dershie. Okay, so here we go. Somebody does mention, okay, so Mr. Boyes, this is one of the attorneys for the women who has been, of course, fighting with Bradley Edwards back and forth court battles with Dershowitz and other attorneys of Jeffrey Epstein. Looks like Dershowitz is mentioned twice. Or no, just one time. Okay, so this is David Boyes, the attorney representing the women. He says, I will be more blunt than the court has been or Professor Cassell has been about Professor Green's article. I'm not sure what article they're referencing. This is an article that cites no authority, and I believe there is no authority for his proposition. I entirely respect his right to advocate on behalf of his client, Alan Dershowitz, who has retained him in connection with litigation that we brought against Mr. Dershowitz, but I would have expected that the law, journal, or Professor Green himself would have disclosed that connection. But regardless of the appropriateness of his disclosure, I think that his article opposing allowing victims to have a voice in this proceeding is inconsistent not only with the policy that underlies the Crime Victims' Rights Act and the very statute that Epstein is being prosecuted under. So I guess Mr. Professor Green and Professor Cassell had written articles prior to this saying that the court shouldn't allow the women to speak. And like I said, I don't want to get sucked into the weeds too much. This is something that I'm going to just read up on my own tonight. Paul Cassell previously served as, he says, I'll be very brief because I know there are others who want to speak. I'm Paul Cassell, previously served as a federal judge in Utah, currently law professor. I just wanted to take 1 minute to address some suggestion that there would be no need for a hearing this morning. I think having heard already from these powerful victims and recognizing how important giving those statements will be in their lives makes clear that Your Honor has followed exactly the right path. With all due respect to other law professors that have recently written an article, I think transparency is one of the overriding objectives in our criminal justice system, and that one substantive action that I would urge Your Honor to take today is to publish your remarks as a published opinion. The Heaton case, to my knowledge, the only reported decision on this particular issue, even though it's more than a decade old. Yet we can see today that these problems recur in many other cases. Your remarks today, I think, should be published so that they can serve as a guide for other judges around the country. Okay, so they're just trying to call the judge to speak. The judge says, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. I had no idea that you would be here when I wrote the remarks, but it was clear from the literature that you are the leading expert formerly of the District Court of Utah, I believe, and it's a pleasure to have you here. So, yeah. All right, what other words? Hollywood? All right, let's see. I want to remind you guys, anybody who's popping in, nothing on Hollywood. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network. I went and paid $103 from the Southern District Court of New York reporters today to get a transcript from the hearings today involving Jeffrey Epstein's victims. So you won't be seeing these anywhere else. If you do hear anybody even talking about this, they're just going to be mentioning the quotes that I've been sharing with you from other outlets. They're not actually going to be digging into this. And let me tell you this, I will upload this document today to theconsciousresistance.com, and anybody who comments below, well, actually email me. It'll be a little more easy for me to handle. Email me at intothelight@protonmail.com, or just simply Derrick@theconsciousresistance.com, and I will get you a copy of this. But I really would appreciate any donations, any support. And as I've said before, this isn't donations like I'm an e-beggar. This is the result of your support. Invest in my investigation so that I can continue to do this. Because, yeah, usually the people who are supposed to do the real journalism, they have big outlets who would fund this. You know, the New York Times or somebody else who would pay this for them. I don't have the New York Times paying things for me. I got you guys. So if you want to help me continue to do this work, I'm going to need your help, guys. So please, fundraiser.com. I'll post a link below. Fundraiser.com/theconsciousresistance. That's fund, FUND, trying to type and talk at the same time. razr.com/the conscious resistance. Go ahead and throw $5-10 in there, guys, whatever you can. It'll help out, and we're going to keep going through this. I know there's a lot more to cover. Okay, school, church, Hollywood, brownstone operations, babies. Let's see what else. Supposedly. All right, I'm going to look up abortion, see if there's any of that stuff. Nothing popped up on abortion. Let's see, Trump. Trump was not mentioned today. I told you guys already Clinton was only mentioned once. Barr. No, nothing about, let's see, William Barr. Nothing on that. I mean, there's some pretty gruesome details for the people who want to hear them as far as like the vibrators and stuff. But I mean, I think most of this is already things that have been known. I'm going to dig through it and find out because I do think it's important. As I said earlier, Bradley Edwards said today that he thinks it's curious the way Jeffrey Epstein died. So I plan to get in touch with him and schedule an interview if I can again and ask him, what do you mean by curious? Is there something you haven't said in court? Now that the case is wrapping up, in some ways, it might actually make it easier for people to speak up because they won't be bound by any sort of legal, back and forth, any legal repercussions for just choosing to speak publicly. All right, so let me read you this aspect. This is one of the victims describing their life and how they met Jeffrey Epstein. Let me see who this is. If this is Virginia Giuffre. No, this is, who do we have here? Sorry, guys. This is Jane Doe. Okay, so Jane Doe. In 2004, when I was 15 years old, I flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane to Zorro Ranch, where I was sexually molested by him for many hours. What I remember most vividly was him explaining to me how beneficial the experience was for me and how much he was helping me grow. Yikes. I remember feeling so small and powerless, especially after he positioned me by laying me on his floor so that I was confronted by all the framed photographs on his dresser of him smiling with wealthy celebrities and politicians. After he finished with me, he told me to describe in detail how good my first sexual experience felt. That was the first of many lies I was forced to carry for him. I felt powerless, not merely because one man wanted me to strip me of my innocence, but because I was the victim of a system that just enfranchises human beings, making them vulnerable to pedophilic exploitation. As unjust as what happened to me was, I believe the experience to be a symptom of insidious and pathological violence that extreme wealth yields, a violence which ultimately stays hidden through channels of extreme power that serve it. That's pretty interesting right there. Listen to that statement again. She says, I believe that the experience of her being raped by Jeffrey Epstein to be a symptom of insidious and pathological violence that extreme wealth yields, a violence which ultimately stays hidden through channels of extreme power that serve it. Channels of extreme power. I first identified with this feeling the night after I was molested by Epstein when another girl and I took out 2 of his ATVs and raced them across the mesa. I crashed mine and expressed my concern to the other girl of getting in trouble, which she replied to me, "Don't worry, no one gets in trouble for anything here." Even as a child, I understood in a sad and precocious way that what I hope we have the ability of changing now. Even though Epstein is dead, there is still injustice to be brought for the crimes we felt powerless against concealing for him and the system that supported him for all these years. So that's pretty powerful stuff. So that was one Jane Doe. And there's another Jane Doe. Lawyer Miss Allred says, Your Honor, may it please the court, I would like to read a statement for Jane Doe, my client, who is present in court, but requested that I read it. We only have one opportunity at childhood, the one opportunity to develop, one opportunity to find direction for our lives. Jeffrey Epstein robbed and denied me at each opportunity he had. I came from a small Texas town not far from the New Mexico border. My mother died when I was 11, after suffering from cancer for many years. My father was devastated, as were my siblings and I. My father was saddled with debt. My only hope for college was to get a scholarship. When I was 15, I was a blossoming freshman in high school, and I was trying to carry on my mother's dream. She wanted me to master violin. After school, I'd often go to the mall in a nearby city. A lady approached me and saw I had a violin case with me and asked if I was any good. We talked about the violin, my family, and why I had clothes that looked like hand-me-downs. The lady told me she works for a very rich man, this is likely Josiane Maxwell, who had a home close by, and that he would pay to hear me play. I was told that if I could get away, she would arrange for transportation to and from his place and have me back before anyone knew I was gone. After some hesitation, I agreed. This decision was the beginning of the end of my childhood. The man, who only identified himself as Jay or Jeff, had asked if I would give him a massage, and over 4 visits eventually progressed to forced oral copulation. The money he gave me further placed my young soul into a perverse sense of hell. I was so utterly disgusted with myself and what he did to me that I stopped going to see him. I had documented the events with a Texas rape crisis center about the man I now know as Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein targeted and took advantage of me, a young girl whose mother had recently died a horrific death and whose family structure had deteriorated. His actions placed me, a young girl, into a downward spiral to the point where I purchased a gun and drove myself to an isolated place to end my suffering. A voice that could only have been from my mother told me, quote, "I am not the victim. I am the victor, and I dare not pull the trigger." I returned the gun days later. Epstein is a coward. He lived his life leeching off the souls of inspiring young girls due to the fact that he could never know how it feels inspired to live. Like a leech, once Epstein had his fill, he would unlatch and seek out another victim. The only sense of justice I had hoped to see was Epstein being sentenced. However, Epstein died as he lived, taking the easy way out without any responsibility. Then, Your Honor, the next statement is also a statement of a Jane Doe, may it please the court. So this is a separate Jane Doe. Like I said, there's plenty of these women who still are choosing not to be identified. And, I know some of this is disturbing, guys. The reason I'm reading this is what it gets. This is the heart of the matter. Let's break it down, right? Because a lot of you, as I've been hinting at lately, I've been getting frustrated with the infotainment, conspiratainment part of YouTube and the internet, and people who are just obsessed with this case. And, the victims are really lost in our chase of headlines, right? People forget that there are real women who were flown across islands. And as we know, with what Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein were doing, they were specifically going to poor communities where low-income people who were just trying to, just young girls. And I've seen you idiots online too say, "Oh my God, these girls were getting paid. These were whores. These were not victims." Blah, blah. It's like, dude, this is an older dude who's connected to a freaking intelligence agency with a manipulative old lady that befriends them and tries to act all nice and friendly to them. Most of them were dealing with crazy, troubled family situations and probably, doing not too well financially. And they come into their lives and they basically entice them into this. And then, as you can see, it's not like these women are just these girls, because they were girls at the time. I know they're women now, but they were girls then. Teenage girls. It's not like they're sitting happy, like going to the mall. Yeah, I got this. Maybe they're trying to fill a void by, I got $400 from this guy while he touched me and groped me with a vibrator. This one said that her soul, was being eaten away. So can we please not forget the victims in all this? Because that's what matters more than anything, more than any sort of flashy headlines about Epstein and the island and the Clintons and the Trumps and whatever else that we're all looking for. I mean, I'm serious, guys. Like, it's there's more going on than much of us want to believe. And as I told you guys, we're not going to get to the bottom of this. We won't get to the bottom of this. And it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. So for those who are just tuning in, what I was just reading, and we're going to read some more, is Jeffrey Epstein documents. So today, Jeffrey Epstein was in the news again, of course, because many of his victims were able to testify in court today. I will show you this, guys, as well. I also found this. The court case was officially closed a week ago, August 21st, 2019. Obviously, Epstein's dead, but so the case is closed. But before they closed it, they did say that the victims could have a day in court to come speak, and many of them chose to speak in person. Some of them spoke through their lawyers. Others just sent in statements and chose to be anonymous. But the reason I'm reading this and we're going over this is because the media only gives you a couple of pieces of the puzzle. They only, share with you a couple of the statements and the quotes. They're not actually digging deep like we're trying to do here. So I went to the Southern District Reporter's website and I paid $103 to get these documents. It's 86 pages of documents, transcripts from everything from 10:30 a.m. this morning till this afternoon, whenever it ended. And this is the statements of various victims of Jeffrey Epstein. So that's what you missed. And if you appreciate it, I will say I recommend, again, supporting us on fundraiser.com/The Conscious Resistance. That's Razor with RAZR. We've got, actually, let me just pull it up instead of just yelling it at you guys. How about that? We've got a few more days on this, and this is the kind of stuff I can do with your support. This is how I can do independent journalism. I was just talking to my buddies earlier today. Let me just give you a little rant on this. I was talking to my friends today from Activist Post, which is a website that I still read and I appreciate and I used to write for. And they're suffering just like everybody else in the independent media. They can't pay anybody. The Mind Unleashed can't pay anybody. The Anti-Media can't pay anybody. The Free Thought Project can't pay anybody. Collective Evolution can't pay anybody. Who else did I used to write for? Ben Swan, he can't pay any writers. He's got a small team, but he can't pay writers. Have you noticed how we've lost this whole alternative independent media that was raising money? Raising awareness by spreading articles and content, and through that we were able to get ad revenue and then pay a full team of writers, including myself. I've been able to do investigations for all those websites I mentioned, plus Mint Press, and that allowed me to focus on YouTube, so I could make money with the writing and not have to worry about taking Google money for my videos, and not have to pester you guys, about this. But you can see things have changed now. I don't have those opportunities anymore. So it's either I go back to being a cook at a restaurant and being miserable, or finding some other work. It's not the first step I'm going to do. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm pursuing other alternatives. But it's either I go do that and I stop having time to invest in and research and investigate things, or those of you out there who value my work, help me out. I mean, that's just as simple as that. This is the marketplace, and I'm one person in the marketplace. And I know you got Luke Rakowski, and you got Jason Burmis, and you got James Corbett, and you got all kinds of other good researchers who could potentially get funds from you. But I'm asking you to support me, $5 a month, or support our fundraiser campaign this month for one-time donation. All right, shall I continue? If you guys want me to, I will continue to read some from the transcripts. I got the transcripts right here, but I can wrap this up. And as I said, anybody who emails me at derrick@theconsciousresistance.com, I will send you the link. I'm going to get this up on our website as soon as possible, and the documents will be saved on the website. I just posted the fundraiser link in the chat for those who want to help out, but I'll let you guys catch up. Yeah, I know, $103. It kind of sucks, but this is what I think is important. You're not going to find this in the mainstream. They're not even going to take this time. So, all right, let's continue. Somebody said search victims. We're going to search some more words if you guys got other keywords, but let's just continue. And again, this is disturbing stuff, guys. And I will be clear, these are allegations, right? Court documents are not proof of evidence. With Epstein, we're pretty confident because there's so much information. But there's this whole Me Too thing that came up, and it's believe victims, right? And that's, I think, a dangerous mindset, because anybody can say, hey, this person assaulted me, this person did this to me. Honestly, I'll just be real with you guys. Since I've been running for mayor, people have now started to attack me. I have activists in Houston who do not like me, who are accusing me of sexual assault and rape, which are absolutely complete fucking garbage claims. But there are people who I've seen say, well, I believe victims, so screw Derrick Broze. So you just believe somebody's word and assume that they're a victim. I mean, it's a really illogical way of thinking. But my point here is, so we need to remember that when we look at court documents. I notice a lot in the conspiracy world, people, they see a court document and they think that means fact. Anybody can file a lawsuit and can state anything in court, but until it's proven, it doesn't mean it's a fact, right? It's just a document that's on the record. But in Epstein's case, we're pretty confident with what he said and what he did. So let's continue. This is another Jane Doe. I was a 16-year-old when Jeffrey Epstein first raped me. I was naive and gullible. He was a pillar of finance and a giant in the world that I was an insignificant part of. I was so impressed that this great man would even talk to me and impart any of his wisdom to me. I gladly jumped at the chance to meet him again, when he told me how impressed he was with my personal story and maturity for my age. When I was in his presence, he made an effort to call celebrities and influential people on speakerphone, like award-winning actresses and supermodels who always answered his calls. Sadly, I was impressed. He was friends with former and future heads of state and every other fixture in the New York social scene and beyond. He knew important people in my own world that I looked up to and revered, but he spoke about them like they were sweet distractions far beneath his stature. He could easily reach down from his position and influence the people directly involved with my daily life and future prosperity. You get that? He could easily reach down from his position and influence the people directly involved in my daily life. So she's giving an example of his power and his control, over other people's lives. So let's continue. I was the perfect victim. My whole life was extremely turbulent, but one of my mother's greatest wishes was that all her children would graduate from respectable universities. He promised me that he would write a letter of recommendation for Harvard if I got the grades and scores needed for admission. His word was worth a lot, he assured me, as he was in the midst of funding and leading Harvard studies on the human brain, as we now know. And the president was his friend. The fact that all of you already know these next details, which I'll share, should ignite fire instead of induce the complacency they did in the past, when heard repeatedly over the years. But yes, an innocent massage turned sexual almost immediately. Here, come help me with the kink in my shoulder while we finish our discussion. I'm guessing that's a quote from Epstein. A large vibrator and a couple $100, disgust and dirty secret, more praise and imparted wisdom from a godlike figure, a deliberate diabolical depression of grooming and submission for his pleasure and release. Even if I resisted, I was no match for him. I felt powerless, ashamed, and embarrassed. I wanted to vomit remembering these moments. What I learned in those depraved sessions, staring up at the dome ceiling in his private massage room, tore a violent hole through my normal sexual awakening. I'm haunted forever, having learned everything that there is to know about sex through a vile criminal. Every time a new molestation would bring a new lesson, the progressive and constant unwinding. I was nothing more than a teenage prostitute. I was his slave. I had never even kissed a boy before I met him, and never throughout the horrific abuse did Jeffrey Epstein kiss me even once. When he stole my virginity, he washed my entire body compulsively in the shower and then told me, "If you're not a virgin, I will kill you." And then I wasn't a virgin anymore. He forcefully penetrated me. I was numb. There was pain. But his use of the vibrator and his fingers in previous sessions with me had left a black hole-like void between my legs. I protested, but he forced my face into the bed to stifle my cries. That was the first time. I got a few $100, as usual, as he led me out of his mansion with assurances that I was on the right path guided by him. I lied to myself and tried to believe him. I became a hollow shell. If I missed an appointment, he threatened me and let me know who was in charge. Do you know how important my time is? I'll bury you. I owe this. I won't say the word motherfucking town. He said, I owe this. Okay, she's saying, I owe this. She won't say the word effing town. So he's saying, I own this fucking town. And then he would hang up. I would stand there frozen in the street, terrified that his assistant would call to reschedule. I made sure to stay in line and not disobey him. I was in complete denial. Being paid after every scheduled meeting felt routine and disgusting. He was the master of the universe and the world bent to his will. He would eventually brag to his assistants about my ability to please him sexually right in front of me, leaving me feeling grotesque and worthless. Everything in my outside life was falling apart. I distanced myself from my friends and grew further away from my family. I felt less human after each ordeal. My psyche broke down completely and wouldn't let me continue. One day I walked out of his residence and passed a girl similar to myself. When I turned around, she was entering Jeffrey's residence. He no longer even tried to schedule his appointments with other girls in secrecy from me. Maybe he never did. I was too stupid to see. My world shattered. I had been so naive. I had an epiphany in a calvary of desperation. I realized I was just one of many young girls he had in rotation to come perform for him for money. I went into deep depression and never lifted myself. I wanted to inflict pain on myself. I was humiliated, angry, and suicidal. I locked myself away from everything. I cut myself off forever from the world I had known. I endured the daily agony of knowing my life would never be the same. I could never go back to New York City and the wonderful life I had taken for granted before I met this demon named Jeffrey Epstein. This creature had manipulated and outwitted the whole system, including some of the most intelligent scientists, political people, prosecutors, and power players. How easy was it to manipulate a 16-year-old virgin who never had a boyfriend and came from a background of hardship with no parental guidance or support? I went to therapy and was given antidepressants for severe anxiety and depression. My only solace, years later, was my desire to succeed on my own terms. I immersed myself into my studies and was accepted to every college I applied to, graduating from a top university. To this day, there is still an ache in my being that I did not apply to Harvard in fear of his influence there. They say you never forget your first. I'm in a never-ending nightmare trying to do just that. I'm forever suffering because everything reminds me of that horror. This new wave of worldwide publicity only worsens my despair. It was only many years later that I was finally intimate with a man again. And those moments were marred by my actions as a child with Jeffrey Epstein. Even now, it is impossible to separate his treachery from any care of a good man. For one brief moment, there was elation when he was recently arrested. I would finally get my chance to see him again, face to face, and show... God dang, this is fucked up. I would finally get my chance to see him again face to face and show him what I had become. that I had succeeded on my own, that I was worth something in spite of his abuse, and that I had surmounted the monumental obstacles he laid before me throughout my entire life since falling prey to him. I had hoped humanity would prevail, but it seems to me that he outsmarted everyone so far, and his ghost is still laughing at us. I appeal to all those just and true that his evil legacy and death not stand in the way of resolution and justice for all of his underage victims. Should I keep reading? I mean, there's plenty more of this if you guys want to keep going. And it's necessary. I mean, let's be real. It's necessary because, you know, this is a two-part puzzle, an arrangement here. You investigate, you expose the bad guys. Ideally, in a non-corrupt world, the authorities do their job and they bring them to justice. You help the victims heal. You share their stories, and some sort of healing and justice can happen. That is not what we're going to get in this case. That is not what we're going to get in this case, guys. We're not going to get justice, and I hope that these women can heal. I mean, and honestly, it fucks me up a little bit hearing this lady, Jane Doe, say that, you know, the arrest and the recent news reports are actually like, you know, they're hard on their victims, you know. I'll admit that, and I know others do this too. They might not admit it, but we all know that Epstein trends better than everything else, and that we can do a video on Epstein and it's going to get much more attention than let's go build a garden, let's focus on agorism, and let's talk about solutions. That's why I don't try to just do an Epstein video just for the sake of doing an Epstein video like some other channels will do because they know it's going to get your clicks. But in our interest of reporting on this case, it's very easy to forget about the victims and to forget like that there's people, there's real life people dealing with this stuff, man. And their lives are screwed up, and they're working, they're trying to do what they can to heal. All right, one more poll. Does anybody want me to continue? Like I said, if you really want to read this, like, I mean, I'll do another. I've been talking for 43 minutes. We'll do an hour show or around there. But if you want me to continue, then I will. You're right. There are more Epsteins. There are plenty more Epsteins. There's plenty other people. There's the Finders Network that I've been talking about. There's what journalist Danny Casolaro called The Octopus. This is a book about Danny Casolaro, The Last Circle, involving, you know, this is a good chunk of research involving intelligence networks and involving drug running and human trafficking and pedophilia and killing journalists and killing anybody who gets in the way. And corruption is in our world from top to bottom, you know, top to bottom. And these people have power, man. It's really fucking scary. Even as like running for mayor of Houston, right? I mean, I'm just doing this to try to wake people up, but I can already see the corruption. I can see who the power players. I'm learning a lot about my city in this and how far back the corruption runs and how, you know, from top to bottom, these two parties, the two-party system, the two-party beast, it controls neighborhood groups, it controls local Democrat groups, local Republican groups, because they want to influence and keep only the people in the system that will keep the game going. They're never going to actually let somebody come in there that's going to really challenge it, which is why, my friends, if you believe Donald Trump is a good guy, I implore you to dig deeper and to actually look at his actions, not, you know, what you think the liberal media is saying, but judge him by, you know, his fruit. Because none of these people have our interests at heart. None of them are trying to bring down the deep state. There are no mass arrests coming. It's all a sham. All right, we're going to do some more. We'll do a little more. All right, guys, let's do it. Okay, so we're going to read some more of these victims' testimony. For everybody just joining, thank you guys in the comments for filling them in. We are reading transcripts, which I paid for today to actually hear what the Epstein victims had to say. Because as I said, you know, they throw a couple of quotes. It says, "It eats at my soul." They threw in a couple, the most kind of headline sort of quotes, right? But I want to hear deeper than that. I want to hear where these women stand. So should we just start from the beginning? Maybe we'll just go straight into this. The first victim. All right, let's go a little deeper. So the beginning, it looks like they're just arguing about whether or not the court should have allowed the victims to speak. And then they finally get through those arguments, and we actually get to the victims here in just a second. Yada, yada, yada. They're arguing. Okay. All right, so here we go. Miss Comey. Somebody named Miss Comey. I don't know if that's any relation to James Comey, but let me see if I can find. All right, let's search that. Comey. Okay, Maureen Comey, Allison Moe. Okay, so this is one of the attorneys. Oh, yeah, this is related to James Comey. This is his daughter, right? I know you guys talked about this. Maureen Comey and Allison Moe for the government. So they were there. James Comey's daughter was in attendance. Miss Comey said, I want to get past all the legalese bullshit. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get to the actual people who matter, the victims, not these lawyers arguing in court. Okay. So, look, they mentioned Jeffrey Epstein's suicide right here, and the judge asks if it was a suicide. We have heard allegations that people at the time who had responsibility for protecting our client falsified information. We understand that there were orders out there that Jeffrey Epstein was never to be left alone and that the orders were ignored by many of the employees of the prison. In a word, yikes. In addition, obviously we followed the medical examiner's reports, or we haven't followed the report, we haven't seen it, but heard conclusions. Initially, not enough evidence to come to a conclusion, but wanted to see more. We assumed she was talking about the videotapes, but then came to the conclusion that it was a suicide. We report to the court that, and the judge says, suicide by hanging? And Mr. Weingarten says, yes. And the judge says, was her conclusion? And Mr. Weingarten says, yes. And we report to the court that we had a doctor there at the time, and we had also been in receipt of a tremendous amount of medical and scientific evidence volunteered to us, opining that the injuries suffered, as reported, were far more consistent with assault than with suicide. And we are happy to supply the court with all the information we have. So this is kind of an interesting little thing here, guys. We're going to put the victims aside for just a moment. I'm going to get back to the victims. But here it is, the lawyers in court today, as recent as today, this morning, saying that they have evidence that they have been in receipt of a tremendous amount of medical and scientific evidence that was given to them, showing that the injuries, as reported, were far more consistent with assault than with suicide. And they were going to give the court that information. So, yeah. All right. So we're going to continue on. Like I said, you guys are watching me live read this. I didn't do any pre-reading of this prior to going live. I just knew I needed to go live as soon as possible. So I definitely will be reading more about this tonight and, trying to learn more about what exactly was said. They're going into the details into where Jeffrey Epstein was moved. There's definitely going to be some details in here, guys. I would, get in touch with me, Derrick at theconsciousresistance.com. Email me, and I'll share this with you. But let me get to some more of the victims. Okay, so Brad Edwards, who's the attorney that I interviewed. I have in the courtroom today 15 victims that I represent and have represented over the years. There are at least 20 more who didn't make this hearing today for a multitude of reasons, some out of fear of public exposure, others because the way in which the case ended will never bring full justice, and they decided it was best for them not to talk today. Some of my clients are going to address the court here today. Others are not. Some are going to use their names and have in the past, and others wish to remain anonymous. I have instructed each of them to inform the court reporter that they will be proceeding as Jane Doe so that the court reporter can take them down. For those who wish to remain anonymous. Exactly, Your Honor. And that is satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. Before we would do that, I would like to address a couple of things that have occurred this morning. So this is Bradley Edwards, the attorney that you guys saw me interview. First of all, whether relevant or not, I personally do appreciate the presentation that Mr. Weingart made and Mr. Marty Weinberg made. I have tremendous respect for them. I have worked with them over the years. There is two things of interest to our clients in that respect. One is, because of the tragic ending that none of my clients wanted, nor did I, nor did anyone else, if there is some civil rights violation and there is some civil remedy for Mr. Epstein that goes to the estate, certainly the victims are interested in, as they might help to repair the damage done. So basically saying they might want to sue Epstein's estate for a civil suit if they can't get criminal charges. Second, Mr. Epstein's untimely death, the timing is curious to us. So here we go. Here's the statements he made. The timing is curious to us, but more so, it makes it absolutely impossible for the victims to ever get their day in court that they wanted in court and to get full justice. That now can never happen. I know that Mr. Epstein's attorneys say he wanted it, and they know we did too. And there are a lot of people here today that are very sad by the way this ended for both Mr. Epstein and the fact that full justice was robbed from them once again. So yeah, and there's more. I could probably get into this, but I want to get back to the victims. I think that's really what matters right now, guys. More than getting into this, like the details of what is this and that. I mean, there's going to be important stuff that's worth investigating, but right now, let's focus on the victims. That's what today's about. The victims spoke today. First, they came out and they spoke openly. I would love, Jody, I would love for you guys to read through this. So again, I already checked Mar-a-Lago. I already checked that. But email me, derrick@theconsciousresistance.com. Let me know that you're willing to help out, and I'll get you a copy of this. So let's go through one more of the victims at least and share her story. Her name is Courtney Wild. Courtney, last name Wild. My name is Courtney Wild, and I'm a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused me for years, robbing me of my innocence and mental health. Jeffrey Epstein has done nothing but manipulate our justice system, where he has never been held accountable for his actions, even to this day. Jeffrey Epstein robbed myself and all the other victims of our day in court to confront him one by one, and for that, he is a coward. I want to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office for seeking justice that has long been overdue, and most importantly, given us, the victims, our day in court to speak our piece and find some sort of closure. I feel very angry and sad that justice has never been served in the case. Thank you. So that's what she had to say. So then we have Jane Doe, number 1. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I've shifted what I want to say in hearing what's already been said, and just about the question of Jeffrey Epstein's death. I don't know what the relevance is to this hearing, but I do know that it is profoundly relevant to my life as a victim. I don't like that word, but I still feel like I am learning the ways that he impacted me as a complex situation. But he was also a major part of my life. As destructive as that relationship was, and as much of a villain as we have created him to be, based on the facts we've created him to be a villain, he's a complex villain, and actually, all of that is irrelevant. Anybody deserves an investigation is the right thing to do. It sounds like she's speaking kind of abruptly. Like we do need to know how he died. So she's saying we need to know. It felt like a whole new trauma all over again, and I don't know why, because I'm trying to defend myself against him at this point in my life, but it still does not feel good. It didn't feel good to wake up that morning and find out that he had allegedly committed suicide. Okay? But I also want to say to the press, I read my story in the paper. I read so many other girls' stories that are so similar to my own, and everything that's been focused on it is not the most important part of it. There was the problem with focusing on the facts of the situation that were out of ordinary, and because he was such a grand person and it was just a unique situation. I know that that's the more interesting side of the story, but I don't want to be used as entertainment. And here we go. This is, again, any other YouTubers out there listening to this, please, I'm hearing this. Let's listen to the fucking victims. I know that that's the more interesting side. So she's saying, yes, because he's this interesting person, he's connected all these people, that's more interesting, but they don't want to be used as our entertainment. And the fundamental problem of the whole situation is the element of exploitation and coercion. And these are the things that so many girls can relate to. And even though this Jeffrey Epstein brought it to a grand scale, on some level, a lot of girls could relate to the trauma that we are talking about. And even though this whole situation sucks, I would like to think that it may be possibly a catalyst for change, because obviously, as we're seeing with the Me Too movement, change needs to happen. And what I'm seeing in the papers is not a common story, but it's so much more common than you realize. That's all. Thank you. So Jane Doe number 1 saying this is a lot more common than, than people want to realize. All right, so let me keep reading. We got another Jane Doe number 2 here. I'll continue. How are you? Doing okay. I hadn't prepared any words to speak today, but there is something that was on my mind this morning when I got here. It's been on my mind in reading through the press and through the people that I've spoken to about it, friends and family. It's something that bothered me because I think it has a lot of blame in it as well, a little bit of what my friend who was up here was speaking about. I think that a lot of people asked why we spent so much time, why we stayed. Here we go. This is addressing those of you who are victim blamers. It's an experience that's really hard to explain to people who haven't gone through it. I think there's a writer, Thomas Nagel, who wrote an essay called What Is It Like to Be a Bat? And I think that he touches on it pretty strongly. And if you haven't experienced something, it's very hard to fully understand why someone makes the decisions they do and what the circumstances were. I don't want to speak for all the victims. I think each of us has a different story and different circumstances for why we stayed in it. But for me, I think he was really strategic in how he approached each of us. Things happened slowly over time. It almost was like putting it like that analogy of a frog being in a pan of water and slowly turning the flame up. You didn't realize it was happening, and I don't think anyone can fully understand the experience, but the blame feels very strong. The victim blaming. There's a lot of support as well, but I just want people to try and understand that we aren't bad people. We weren't trying to. It wasn't a situation where we were trying to extort money from someone. A lot of us were in very vulnerable situations and in extreme poverty, circumstances where we didn't have anyone on our side to speak on our behalf. And that's really scary. You start to blame yourself because at first you don't tell anyone what's happening, and it becomes your deep, dark secret that you tried to keep from everyone. And I didn't even know I was a victim until I spoke with my lawyers. I had no idea. I had so much self-hatred and doubt and just guilt for everything. I still do. I still don't feel like I deserve to say I'm a victim, and I think that's a big problem with our society right now, that people are still blaming victims, and I think that does need to change. I hope that today people understand that each of us has a story, has a past, has a family, and just give us a chance to, that's basically all I wanted to say. All right, guys. I'm going to do one or two more and then we're going to stop. You guys fill in everybody who's coming late. Jane Doe number 3. Speaking today in court, one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims getting to speak. As I said earlier, 15 of the victims came today to court in New York City and were able to speak in court about their experiences. So we are reading this. I got this from the Southern District of New York. It cost me a little bit of money. Any donations, any support to allow me to continue this are appreciated. But what matters now is that these victims have a chance to have their voice heard. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. This is Jane Doe number 3. I came to New York City 15 years ago to pursue modeling from a small town. I signed on with an agency and was excited to pursue my passion and my dream. Several months later, I met a female who told me about Mr. Epstein. She portrayed him as an amazing man who genuinely cared for people, and that he was going to be able to help me in a modeling career. I was excited to meet him after hearing her talk about him. He sounded like an amazing person. An introduction was made at his New York home, and it is there that I was sexually assaulted. I left his home after he threw me, basically put money on the table, and I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. This is not the way I was brought up, and I couldn't believe this had happened to me. I left and my world kind of spiraled after that. I stopped going on modeling castings. I gained weight. I became depressed. I stopped going out with my friends. And only 5 months after I'd been in New York City to pursue my dream, I left. I left the modeling industry and I left New York City, and I totally switched my career paths. I buried this deep within me, and all of the new occurrences that have come up in the media is what brought it back up for me. And I feel sickened and saddened that it took so many years, and God knows how many victims, for this to finally come out. But I'm thankful it did, and I'm just angry that he's not alive anymore to have to pay the price for his actions. Thank you for your time. Do I see how they're spinning this as he was suffering from a disease? I don't know if you mean the victims or the press. I haven't seen the press, but I mean, I think he probably did have a mental disease. I mean, that's the reality. I don't know if you mean physical disease, but I mean, we've already seen that. For example, I have friends who've worked in nonprofits dealing with child sexual abuse specifically and who've taken a lot of this work on. And the fact of the matter is that those who are abused typically abuse other people. And when you do it does seem like pedophiles' brains change after a while. And we know that sociopaths don't have, theoretically, a true psychopath does not have the ability to empathize and to have compassion for other people. And so they're allowed to do these crazy things. So Epstein may have been a sociopathic, or a psychopath or sociopathic pedophile or something along these lines. Something probably happened to him. He had to have gotten something happened to Epstein to make him this fucked up. Unless he's just following orders. And either way, I still don't believe that an individual can come from being born into this world as just an innocent baby and then go to this without something traumatic happening to them. Typically, people who abuse people have been abused themselves. I'm going to read one more, guys, and wrap this up. Jane Doe number 4. I just have something very short to say. I met Jeffrey Epstein at a very vulnerable place in my life, and whatever the outcome is with everything, I just wanted to express that we, the victims, we will always carry irreparable damage and pain throughout our lives after this. It's something that's never going to go away. Whoever we marry in our life, whatever future we have in our life, it's always going to be something that's there for us. And I'm very nervous right now. And Jeffrey Epstein, he took away the chance I had at having the future I had envisioned for myself as a young girl. And I think many of us here today will never fully heal from that pain and heartache, so that we'll continue carrying with us. So I just wanted to say that It's something that's irreparable. I can't even really use a better word to describe it. So thank you for hearing us today. Jane Doe 5. This is a letter that I wrote. So it's going to be, Dear Jeffrey. So this is a letter to Jeffrey Epstein. Dear Jeffrey, I think you are a mentally disturbed human being. You used your power to make me believe at a young age that I could have dreams of being a model. You paid for your freedom. You violated my rights. You should have to pay for them just as anyone else. You got a plea deal that no one else would have been able to get. You used your money to get out of paying the price for your actions. Also, as a victim, I never got to see what the agreement was or why the special treatment got approved. I think you should have been in jail for several years in a population and like everyone else that is mentally disturbed like you. You paid for yourself to get special treatment while you were in jail. I don't even think you spent a day in jail as a normal human being. You had investigators come to my house and also went to my friend's house to question me. I will never be able to get over the overwhelming emotions and embarrassment I experienced from that trauma. I needed therapy several times a week and had high stress and anxiety levels. You paid your way to make the public think that the girls had nothing in life going on for them. You wanted to try and blame that we were lower class and that was the problem with the girls. I was from a middle-class family and I did well in school. I lived the American girl dream or the American girl life. I went on family vacations around the world, grew up in a good city, and my parents are still married to this day. Basically, everything you said that we didn't have in our life, I did. It all came down to I was told that I was making $200 an hour. Being young, that was a lot of money, and I didn't know any better. Sadly, you were the one with an illness that you should have to go and see a doctor and also have a mentor group for the sickness you have. I will continue with writing my book about that secret life with all the newspaper articles of the case, my high school agenda book of official dates. I'm basing that proof that I deposited cash after leaving Jeffrey's. I still have all that information, articles that I collected over the years. You mentally and physically traumatized me. I went to therapy, and it was the best thing I did for myself. If anyone learns one thing from this case, I hope it is that money should not let you buy your way free. A crime is a crime, and a victim is a victim. All right, guys. Jody, send me that article. I'll check it out. I haven't seen that. I've been kind of working on other things today, but I just happened to see this, and I think it was important to go out here and give the victims their share. I'm going to say it one more time. Derrick at theconsciousresistance.com. If you want to help me read through these things, if you want to, if you want to see them yourself, hit me up. I'm going to put them on our servers on the Conscious Resistance website after this report ends. I'll include a link to that in the description once this is over. And as I said, I did pay $103. Maybe there's a better way to get this, but as far as I know, if you want to get court transcripts, you got to go through the court reporters, and I followed that process. And since I wasn't there in New York and I didn't have my own notes, this was the best way for me to get those 86 pages, and it cost me $103. So if you want to support our efforts to raise awareness and to continue doing this, I do request that you contribute to our Support the Future of the Conscious Resistance Network crowdfunding campaign. We only have 3 days left. We had a goal of $5,000, but I think if we could hit 2,500, just a couple hundred more, that would be very much appreciated and help me recoup some of my costs so that I can continue to ask these questions. I'm not done. As I told you guys, I have Bradley Edwards, the lawyer's card and information. I'm trying to get another interview with him to see what he thinks is exactly curious about Jeffrey Epstein's death. And of course, I will be reading through the rest of these documents. But I invite you guys to support on patreon.com/Derrick Broze. I invite you to support on subscribestar.com/Derrick Broze or support via our crowdfunding campaign. And that's going to be it, guys. Thank you so much for the interactions, for watching, for the comments. I will respond back to some of them if I can. And until next time, remember, you know the drill. You are powerful. You are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.